If I had known in that moment that the first 10 seconds inside the ancient temple would decide whether I'd survive the next 100 hours, I would never have said yes for the money. The door slammed shut behind me with a heavy, echoing boom, as if history itself had sealed my fate. The darkness thickened instantly, so dense it felt like I could touch it if I reached out. Somewhere beneath the high stone dome, water dripped steadily. Cold air carried the smell of dust, moss, and something far older and deeply unsettling. As though this temple had witnessed far more deaths than I could ever imagine. The rules were simple and ruthless. I had to spend a full 100 hours inside the ancient temple, without taking a single step outside, at no phone, no contact with the outside world. Hidden cameras were embedded in the walls to make sure there was no cheating. If I stepped out even a moment early, I'd get nothing. But if I survived the full 100 hours, the reward was $100,000. An amount that could change my life forever. I kept repeating that to myself, while my heart pounded violently, and my eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness around me. The temple was a labyrinth. Narrow corridors led into halls filled with broken pillars, faceless stone statues, and strange symbols carved into the walls. Some of the markings looked as if they had been scratched by fingernails. I was given torches and fire-starting supplies, the only mercy the organizers allowed. When the first torch flared to life, shadows began to move across the walls, as if they were alive. In that moment, I realized the darkness here wasn't just the absence of light. It was something that was watching. The initial hours passed relatively calmly. I explored the temple. When do I want to lose my way? I found a hall with a natural water spring and a small spot where one could sit and rest. But as time went on, the feeling that I wasn't alone kept growing stronger. Sometimes it felt like there were footsteps behind me, but whenever I turned around, there was nothing except dust and stone. By the 20th hour, strange things began to happen. The torches started going out on their own, even though there was no gust of wind. In one hall, I noticed fresh footprints in the dust, as if someone had passed through barefoot just minutes earlier. I kept telling myself it was only an illusion, the result of exhaustion and darkness. But deep inside, my heart was slowly tightening with fear. By the 30th hour, the temple itself seemed to change. The corridors I had passed through earlier now led somewhere else. The markings I had made on the walls were gone. At one point, I kept returning to the same broken statue. No matter how many times I changed my path, panic rose up to my throat. I screamed, and my voice came back to me as a twisted echo mocking me, as if the temple itself was laughing. Sleep became my enemy. Every time I drifted off, the same dream returned. The temple was alive, the walls were breathing, and a whisper from the depths was calling my name. I would wake up drenched in sweat, with the feeling that someone was standing right beside me. Once, when my eyes opened, I saw a shadow at the far end of the hall. In the blink of an eye, it vanished. By the 50th hour, I began talking to myself, just to avoid going insane in the silence. I counted the minutes out loud, recalled my childhood, repeated the names of my loved ones, and promised myself that I would not give up. Money no longer mattered. I wanted to prove that the temple could not break me. By the 62nd hour, I discovered a room I had never seen before. In the center stood a stone altar, upon which rested an ancient clock, its hands missing. As I approached, a clear but faint voice echoed in my mind, "Time is not yours here." I stepped back, my heart pounding. Indachi real lasty chimpo. Mirma played was a teste. And this test was far deeper than 100 hours. As I stepped away from the altar, the doors behind me began to close on their own. Stone grated and groaned. Passages vanished, and I ran blindly until I collapsed to my knees in complete darkness. I thought it was all over, that I wouldn't survive. But somewhere in the distance, I heard that same sound again, the dripping of water. That sound became my last thread connecting me to reality. I stood up and moved toward it, not knowing whether it would lead me to salvation or to an even worse fate. I did not yet know that the true trials would begin after the 17th hour, and that the temple was going to offer me a choice one on which not only the reward would depend, but also what kind of person I would leave this place as, if I managed to leave at all. The 17th hour arrived with a silence so deep that it felt like a whistle was ringing in my ears. I could no longer gauge time by physical sensations. I only counted in my mind and estimated through my body's exhaustion. Every step felt heavy, my legs trembled, and my thoughts began to scatter. The temple had sensed my weakness and was now openly toying with me. I found myself in the hall, with the stone altar again, even though I was certain I had come far beyond it. Now, the stone clock emitted a dim, sickly light. For the first time, the voice echoed not just in my mind, but all around me. The voice was deep, calm, and terrifyingly confident. It said that the temple does not test the body, it tests choice. That many have come here for wealth, but very few have left as themselves. I was presented with a bargain. The temple could shorten my time. If I were to leave behind something important here, a memory, an emotion, a part of myself, the remaining hours would pass without fear or pain. I stood there, knowing this was no illusion. Some ancient power, present for centuries, was watching me from beyond the stone. I refused. Not immediately, but eventually. Because I realized that if I left without a part of myself, the money would be hollow. The moment I made that choice, the lights went out and the walls began to shake. The temple seemed enraged. The corridors started to shift. The floor slid beneath my feet, and I fell several times, my palms scraping against the stone and getting cut. After the 80th hour, the scene changed. I began to see people, other participants, even though I knew there could be no one else here. They sat along the walls, staring at me with empty eyes, whispering for me to leave before it was too late. I would cover my ears, but the voices continued to echo in my mind. The most terrifying part was that in their faces, I saw people I knew, as if the temple was giving shape to my fear and doubt. I clung to a single thought, just a little more time left. After every hour, I scratched a mark into the stone. 90 hours. 95. Time became painfully slow. I barely ate or drank. My strength was almost gone. At one point, I slid down the wall and sat there, thinking that if I fell asleep, I might never wake up. But at that exact moment, a new sound appeared somewhere in the distance, the ticking of metal. No whisper, no echo. A house sound. It was a timer, very faint yet completely real. It was counting the final minute. I staggered to my feet and moved toward the sound. The corridor led me to a massive door I had never seen before. A stone door, covered with the same mysterious markings. The timer stopped. 100 hours. The door slowly began to open. The light was so bright that I covered my eyes with my hands. The scent of fresh air smelled like the most beautiful fragrance in the world. I stepped outside and felt now I was out, on the cool ground. People rushed toward me. Cameras, voices, the noise. I heard words win, $100,000, but everything felt distant, as if from far away. But in that very moment, I realized the truth. The temple had truly taken something from me. Not a memory, not a feeling, but fear. That deep, paralyzing fear of loneliness and darkness. It stayed there, among the stones and whispers. Yes, I had won the money. But far more valuable than that was emerging out as a different person. Even today, sometimes at night, I dream of dripping water in empty halls. But now I know this. I didn't survive because I was stronger than the temple, but because I didn't let it decide for me. And if anyone ever offers me $100,000 again in exchange for another 100 hours, I would smile. Anhefilzi! Because some victories in life are meant to happen only once.
What you just saw was only the beginning. Subscribe. The next moment is even more shocking.